Hello and welcome to this week's Shawn Petite Creative Team post. I'm Nicole Watson and today I'm creating on a $30 Target find inspired by Shawn's new Vintage Crosses stencil. I hope you are inspired to grab your supplies and join me. I've wanted to play more on wood panels, so when I saw this $3 sign in the Target dollar spot, I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to see if I liked creating on wood instead of canvas. I wanted to preserve the color and also test the integrity of this wood sign along with prepping it, so I first applied a generous layer of clear gesso before collaging these hem pages with matte medium. Once the matte medium was dry, I grabbed regular white gesso to mute the hem pages a bit, and also to prep them for my next layers. I diluted the gesso with water, wiped it away, and layered it until I was happy with the result. Then it was time to add a layer of stenciled crosses using gesso and a round applicator. After the crosses dried, I grabbed my favorite Stabilo all pencils in graphite and black and very loosely traced around the shapes. Then I activated those Stabilo marks with water and a paintbrush to create shadows and shading around the crosses. I played back and forth with the pencils and water, and when I was finished, sprayed a layer of fixative to keep the Stabilo in place since it's water soluble. I was inspired by the crosses and the hem pages that I used to sketch a church on this right side. I used a charcoal pencil to loosely sketch it in because I like to be able to wipe away lines and sketch marks that I'm not happy with. As you'll see, I'll sketch this church a couple times, draw some windows that I decided weren't exactly the right shape, and used a baby wipe to wipe the charcoal away and redraw those windows in a way that I thought looked better for the church. When the charcoal lines were finished and I was happy with the result of my sketch, I made them more permanent by tracing around that church again using the Stabilo, and then I activated the Stabilo marks with water to create the same kind of shadows and shading around the church. When I noticed the right side of my church was a little higher than the left, I grabbed a scrap piece of paper to help even out the sides and then adjusted the roof line a little bit. The Stabilo is really forgiving, so you can wipe it away with a baby wipe and adjust your roof like I did if you kind of get one wall higher than the other. And then when I was happy with how the church looked and the shadows and shading around the church, I fixed it again with that fixative before moving on to my next layers. Next, I used some watered down gesso to color inside of the church. I watered it down so that those shadows would show up behind the gesso, and also I didn't want to totally go over those hem pages. I still wanted to see the words and the music behind the gesso, so I watered down that white gesso and spread it throughout the main building of the church and the steeple part, and then put a little bit also in the windows on the sides and the door and the round window as well to prep them for the colors that I would add next. Next, I grabbed this Dina Wakley acrylic paint to color in my stained glass windows and the door, and then I also used the Sedona throughout to kind of tone down some of the colors and for a little grunge here and there. I put little blobs of each color on my palette paper and sprayed them with water to make the paint a little more transparent for that stained glass look. I used a combination of marine and peacock on the front door and then began the process of layering color on the door and windows. I simply dotted small amounts of paint in the windows, waited for the colors to dry a bit before dotting next to them so the colors didn't run together too much. This helped me create that watered down kind of stained glass look. I didn't really want it to look like a specific picture in the windows, but just give the illusion that they were stained glass windows. Then I used some watered down umber to color the roof and add additional color to the shadows and shading throughout the church. I kept that umber, shadows, and shading light so that I could add to it as I wanted it to become darker. It's easier to add to your layers than take it away once it's dried. So work more loose, a little bit lighter on your layering, more watered down, and then add color as you think it needs to get darker. Next, I wanted to kind of ground that church so it didn't look like it was floating in the middle of my wood panel. So I mixed some colors together, including some additional umber to create some grass on the bottom, and then also some of the blues together with some of the gesso to create a light blue for the sky. And I also used my Stabilo All to kind of trace a little sidewalk look under that front door. Next, I wanted to brighten the church back up, so I got my white gesso and watered it down and added a little bit more white to the front of the church, and I also added some white in those stained glass windows to brighten them up as well and add some little light reflections to them. Then I grabbed a really fine liner paintbrush and painted some really fine white lines around those windows and the front door, and also on the sides of the church in different places to make the church pop out and the windows pop out, and to add some fine highlights to the places that I thought needed it. There was really no necessarily rhyme or reason to where I put these highlights, just where I thought it looked best. Overall, I tried to kind of keep the left of the church a little darker, but in the end, I just did what I thought looked best. Then I just played a little bit more on my background. I kind of wanted to tone it down and grunge it a little bit and mute those crosses at first. And so I grabbed some watered down umber and did that to the front in different places. Then I decided that I wanted to bring the blue back out. So I put some more of the blue in the crosses and kind of, I don't know, just played until I really liked the result. Once I was happy with that added blue to bring those crosses back out, I waited for it to dry, and then I watered down some of the umber and flicked it on the front, and I also played with the grass area, adding more umber and green to bring it out, and the sidewalk area. As you can see, I just really played back and forth until I got the background of that church to be where I wanted, and because I'm going to add another layer of crosses coming up. I added quite a bit of flick paint splatters on the front and wiped away the ones I didn't like, and then when it was dry, I grabbed my Stabilo All pencils again to add more of those sketchy lines back in. I really like the sketchy lines and the interest that creates, and a lot of it had gone away or become muddled as I added layers. So I drew those back into the front of the church and around the crosses and anywhere I thought just needed some more of that sketchy line texture to the front. Once that's finished, I want to affix those like I had been doing so that they don't run away on my next layers. Grab that fixative and just sprayed another light coat to keep that Stabilo All's integrity on the front of my canvas. Once my fixative was dry, I wanted to add a final layer of crosses to the front of my canvas. I grabbed the two Dina Wakley colors, the Penny and the Gilt, and played on my palette paper and really didn't like the color of either of them, so decided to mix them to get more of the kind of shiny goldish, copperish color that I was looking for. Used that same applicator, and this time I just put random crosses on the front, depending on where I felt that they would look best, and then I also added one to that right side with that same applicator tool. And once they were dry, I traced around those crosses with the Stabilo like I had been doing, except this time I wanted my tracing to be a little bit more precise, so I used that stencil again, grabbed the Stabilo graphite pencil, and traced inside the stencil to keep my lines a little bit tighter to the crosses. So I had some of that Gilt and Penny left over on my palette paper and also in that applicator brush, so I decided to loosely use the applicator around the edges and the sides of my wood panel to add just a hint of the gold color, and then I also watered it down and splattered some of the gold on the church as well, and I wiped away the splatter marks that I didn't like. I wanted to add that same dark shadowing around those crosses on the front layer like I had done on the back, but I didn't necessarily want a lot of dark lines around them, so I scribbled my Stabilo pencil, the dark black version of it, on my palette paper and watered it down, and used that watered down paint in its essence on my palette paper to make the shadows around those crosses. Then I wanted to add a saying to the front. Grabbed these letter stickers by Tim Holtz, put them on the front, added some matte medium to secure them down, and I was finished. I really hope you enjoyed my tutorial this week for Shawn Petite's Creative Team. Next time you're in the dollar section or a dollar store and see a wood panel or something else similar, think about what you can do to create over it and make a beautiful piece of art. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and Shawn's channel. And if you make something, tag us on Facebook or on Instagram and share with us what you've made. Thank you!